Hi, my friend, and welcome to the Good Girl Syndrome show. My name is Julie, or Julie Vander Meulen in French. I forget my own name. Or Julie Vander Meulen, if you pronounce it in English. I'm gonna figure out this episode. Um, Today we're gonna talk about something super, super interesting. I just finished filming the previous episode, so this is episode 18. I just finished episode 17, where I was answering Iris's question around how to handle having negative influences in your life, right? She was explaining a situation of like how the negative people in her life are influencing how she feels, right? And she was wondering if it was true that these people were in fact impacting her, and how to change that, basically. So if you're interested in that, go check out the previous episode. And today, what I'm going to do is the version of that where I explain to you my own story with regards to negative people, how it used to be for me, how it is now, and the steps in between. So if you're interested in that, this will be a wonderful episode for you. If you're new here, please do not forget to subscribe so that you never miss out an episode of the Good Girl Syndrome show. And for everyone, if you're here and you're enjoying these episodes, please do encourage me and put a thumbs up to this episode or comment below, whatever you want to do. And of course, if you have a question for me, just like Iris did, um, that I just did at the episode about, you can go and find in the description box. You'll see a lot of different links to all the free things that I do. One of the free things that I do is that I take any of your questions, your stories, and so on and so forth, and I transform them. I reply to you in content that I create somewhere. So if you want to have your own situation or your own struggle answered by me, go check out the Google form link, and I'll be sure to create an episode about that in the next few weeks. With that said, I think it's time for us to start. So, my own, my own experience with negative people. Um, so, like Iris, I mean, we don't have the full background for Iris, but we know that she has a tendency to be surrounded by negative people, right? Overly critical people. That was certainly my case for most of my life. It's a very, very recent thing that I have a very positive people around me now. Very, very positive people around me now. I have less people as well, so that's interesting. Interesting too. I've become very, very picky with who I allow in my life. If you know me personally, you know that to be true, that I'm someone, I had a friend who used to say that I make myself rare. And I think it's an accurate representation of how I behave, partly because I'm very introverted. And so I need a lot of time by myself, right? And the nature of the work that I do, a lot of the things that I do are with a lot of people, which I love, but it also takes a lot of my energy, and I need a lot of time to do focused work where I can be by myself in front of my computer, thinking, writing, doing these types of things as well. So that means that even for the people who are super positive in my life and I absolutely adore, hi to them, you know who you are. Um, then even for them, I make myself rare, right? Because I really conserve my own energy and I follow what is right for me, right? And we have kind of rules around that, so that it fits me, but also a way that I can communicate with them, right? In a way that suits them, right? So we're trying to find ways to like manage both of our experiences. But yeah, so that's where I am right now in my life. So the type of people that I used to be drawn to, I think since I was a child, I was always drawn to things like teaching, helping, I loved solving problems. I loved making people feel good. I think before I even knew what a coach was, I think I had a little bit of that mindset in me where I loved asking people questions. I was quite positive. I was trying to find solutions, this type of person who very easily becomes people's best friend, no? Because of the vibe that I brought, because I was genuinely interested and concerned for people, but also because I really wanted to help. Like, I really, really believed in people's best potential. And when I saw them in a specific way, I thought I could give them that type of love that perhaps they'd been craving their whole lives. Which I think if you know these patterns, you know that there's some issues with what I just said. And at the same time, there's also some positive things, which are values in there. There's values of altruism, of generosity, of being kind to people, compassionate, like not judging a book by its covers. All values that to this day, they're very, very dear to me. Very, very dear to me. I try to approach everyone with that type of mindset. However, the big difference is to me now, if I cross paths with you, right, and you're not someone that I want to be around for the rest of my life all the time, there's no mistake in my mind, like in terms of how much energy I'm going to give you. After I'm going to spend, like, I'm going to see you in the elevator. I'm going to spend a minute or 30 seconds and I'll be, the best part of your day, so to speak. Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but you see what I mean. Like, I'm going to be fully present. I'm going to say hi. I know all of my neighbors. I know what's going on with their lives, like whatever they want to share, I know and I remember, right? And so even if it takes 30 seconds, I'll be fully present with people. But there's no mistake in my mind that my neighbors are my best friends. It could be, but they're not, right? And so there's no mistake in my mind. And if it's like, sometimes someone is having a bad day, I'll take the extra 5 minutes, right? But then, I'll wish them the best and I'll be like, okay, so I'm thinking of you, you've got this, whatever it is, right? Or, so much compassion for what you going through right now. But then I leave, right? Which I wasn't able to do before. So my situation was that I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, but I was always looking for the wounded birds, always looking for the wounded birds. And I was always looking for people who were being invisible by other people or who were being mistreated by other people, the ones who were more difficult, like all the people who are a bit outsiders. These were really my people, right? And very simply because I was, and to a certain extent, am one of those people, though. I don't think I'm particularly easy to be around in the sense that I'm very friendly and so on and so forth. But you heard like all of my principles and my rules for like, I'm very introverted. I'm all these different things, right? Now I live fully in compassion for myself, and I feel that these are my traits, and I love the way that I am, right? I can always improve. I can always do better. I'm sure I will change with time. But for the most part, I'm quite happy with who I am, right? And so this is who I bring to the table, and there's a specific set of rules, right? There's a specific set of rules for how you can be in my life, right? Close to me. And there's a specific set of rules for how how I'm going to interact with you. Like there's rules for different things, and how if we build a relationship, there's rules for how we are going to interact. They're not my rules, right? They don't have to be my rules, but I do have some things that are important to me and that I will communicate with the person who's a chosen one for me, and I'm the chosen one for them, right? Whether that's a friendship or a partnership or whatever it is, right? Um, and so yeah. So before I had none of those things, right? And I was just feeling like I was a difficult person who was, you know, I also had a lot of very little self-worth. So I thought that I was, not someone that people wanted to be around. I didn't feel like I was loved unconditionally. I didn't have all those words back then, but I'm translating it, to the word, the jargon that I know right now, from all this psychology work and personal development and all the self-help books and stuff like that, the coaching. There's a specific jargon to all of that, and that's how I'm interpreting it right now. But I felt very much of an outsider, to put it plainly. And so I loved being with other outsiders and making them feel really good about themselves, right? I really, really loved that. And I think I was a light in a room. When I enter a room, I bring a lot of light, and I think I still do that, right? And I do it. I love that. I love that about myself, and I love being that, right? And at the same time, nowadays, I'm not only that, whereas before, I only allowed myself to be that. And so, all the people who were around me, especially my best friends, because I had the types of, pattern of a good girl, I have very fusional. So, remember that fusion in relationships, right? With people, with like a one person, my best friend, no? Like I had this one best friend, and it was like total fusion with this person that I adored, and they were my whole world, right? And it so happened that they were quite destructive, right? They were mean to me, they were very negative about life, they had a big ego, like all the types of things that many times nowadays we call narcissists, right? So I'm not saying that these people were narcissists or not. I'm not having an opinion on that. I'm just saying you see the type of person that I'm talking about, what type of traits, negative traits they are, and perhaps you can relate to that as well. And so we know why I was attracted to that, right? Because I was trying to compensate for my own wounds, but also I was trying to save them, right? The hero complex, savior complex that many, many good girls have. And also, quite frankly, people have had a tendency in my life to be attracted to my light, right? So I am not someone who has an issue with making friends, if you see what I mean. I'm not someone who has an issue with any types of, thing situation where like people are drawn to me in general. So my issue has been more of like, how do I not like how can I keep having my light without confusing people about the degree of our relationship has been more my issue, or like confusing people but also confusing myself. Like I think I'm the one who used to put myself in situations where everyone would think that I was their best friend, but they were not my best friend, right? And then I would have 30 people who thought I was their best friend and they were not my best friend, you know. So that was more the type of issues that I had, and all those people had in common something, which is they needed me, right? They needed me. They wanted me in their life and they really needed me. And I think that's what I needed, right? I didn't realize it back then, but that was my thing, my destructive pattern. There were many, but one of them, and in this specific thing that we're talking about, is I loved the sensation of being needed. And still to this day, there's a little thing that like if someone needs anything, I'm there, I have it. I'm gonna do it. I'm saying it in a playful way, but it really was that. Like I had a deep, deep need to feel special, to feel loved, to feel like I was contributing to the world, to feel like I was a good person. That was really important to me too. And so I was, and also being strong. Being strong was very important to me too. And somehow helping other people was giving me all of that because I was the special someone who could help them out. I was the strong one who never had anything, supposedly, right? Not internally, but from the outside, it looked like I could always do all the things and I could always be there for people, whatever happened, and so on and so forth. So I was the strong one. And that gave me, like a shot of adrenaline and a shot of like self-confidence for the moment. It was draining me too. I was exhausted, right? But still. Um, and I felt like I was needed, right? And to me, being needed gave me a type of love, what I thought was love, a certain type of love. Someone who really, really needs you, supposedly, in the way the story that I had created in my mind, they won't leave you too, right? So you will not be abandoned, right? So if you have, like me, you have some sort of abandonment wound or like a wound of like being neglected or something like that, certain love will tend to be what you will go for because you will go for people that you think will need you to some degree, right? And so they won't leave, is the story you make in your mind. Of course, they can leave. This has happened to me before with my romantic relationship. One of the most important people in my life back then, I was not particularly in love with that person, but I loved them as a person more as a friend, right? Than as a boyfriend. And I was staying there because I really thought that this was certain love. This person would never abandon me. And yet he did, right? So, so you're never really safe, right? That's the lesson here. But so in terms of we talked about like the types of relationships that I used to have. We saw the benefits of it. So that's what I just told you, right? What it gave me, the positive things that it gave me. And why I'm doing that is because you'll have noticed that in any pattern that we have, sometimes we think that there's something wrong with us when we have a specific pattern that we do not like. And I think the mistake in that is thinking that, like, assuming that the pattern is flawed and or that it is stupid. And to me, it is neither of those. It is a very accurate way of solving an issue, right? So a pattern that you have is something very intelligent that your mind has created in order to keep you safe, right? It's a survival type of mechanism, right? And it is very, very smartly done. The problem is not that the pattern is flawed. The problem is that the idea of this pattern is to keep you safe in a way that existed in the past, right? So for the short term, this pattern worked really, really well, right? So for me, for example, for the most part, look at what it got me. I had a lot of friends. I felt like I was needed. I was special. I had all these beautiful benefits. So my pattern was working well on that end, right? It was giving me, it was solving my problem of abandonment and not feeling loved and feeling neglected. There I had attention all of the time, which I confused with love, right? Um, but then there's a cost, right? With everything in life, right? And with our patterns as well, there's always a cost, right? And so my pattern was creating a lot of costs for me. So this pattern was bringing me down, quite honestly, because people who always need help, not want help, but like constantly need the help of others, right? They want someone to save them all the time as well. Like it goes both way, right? I wanted to save someone, but they wanted to be saved, right? So it creates this sort of, they're a victim, I'm the savior, this type of thing, but this type of dynamic. So I was exhausted all the time, right? I also felt like I never had time for myself. I felt really, really overwhelmed by all the emotions, the negative emotions of everyone else. I also felt like everyone was always using me, right? Because did they really love me in the end? Because, like they were always reaching out when they needed something from me, so that there was a counter to that after some point my mood was going much, much more down because if all you have around you are people who are negative and sad and angry and all those things, how do you think you feel at the end of a 3 hour conversation with someone who is really, really sad, right? I was feeling depleted emotionally, right? Um, and I did not, I was like a sponge. So any emotion that you would have, I would so be wanting to help and I would be so much in compassion and empathy that I would absorb all of the negative emotions that you were having. You would feel a little lighter, and I would feel like 10 pounds, heavier than what I did before. And imagine that I would be doing that with every single relationship in my life, which meant that I was feeling like that all the time. And it was going down, 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 right? It also made me want to isolate. So I became someone who was, let's call it flaky. Not so on one hand, you could most definitely rely on me if you had a real issue, and that everyone knew in their life, and they still know that to this day, that if you really have a problem, you can reach out to me and I will definitely help. I'll be there because I don't want people to be in like difficult situations and not get help. I will not allow that. So in this way, according to my values, I'm a really good friend. How I can be a not so good friend is like on the other moments. So I I didn't want to spend time with people just to have fun because I was like, if you're gonna be all right and you don't need me right now, I'm gonna take some time for myself, or I need this time because I actually need to work, because if I'm talking all the time to other people and helping them and solving their problems, when do I do my actual things, How do I, when do I study when I was a student? When do I work? When do I do my own things? Like there was no time to do things. And if it so happened that it was a day that was pretty calm and no one had an issue that I needed to fix because I was the only savior, who could do that, um, then I wanted to rest. I wanted to be by myself and I wanted to rest. So I had a big, big tendency to isolate myself. And also, I was feeling very, very lonely. I didn't think I was lonely because I was surrounded by a lot of people who really, I felt really cared about me and I really cared about them. And I didn't think that I was lonely because I didn't want more relationships, but I felt lonely inside myself in the sense that I never felt like I could or wanted to share bad things about my life, like what was really going on inside of me. Partly because I didn't want to be a burden, right? But partly also because these were not the right people to be able to receive what I had to say, because I wanted to be uplifted, like say something and be in some way uplifted or have a solution or something like that. And what those people would do, because their default lens of the world was that, you know, everything was negative and it was gloomy, and like it made me feel even worse about myself or about my life if I were to share it with these people. So I felt quite lonely as well. So there was a lot of costs to this pattern, right? However intelligent and however useful it was when I created it consciously or unconsciously when I was younger, right? And so I needed to change that. Um, and so I think to me, the shift of like the types of friends that I used to have or the types of people that I used to have around me and how I now live my life with very, very uplifting people, beautiful, beautiful people who, by the way, um, have had very difficult lives for most of them. Um, yeah, very difficult lives or have had like they've been outsiders as well, right? They just did something with it. They didn't stay in the victim stage. They did something about it. They don't need me to solve their problems. They're fully independent. They know they have full agency. They know they're capable and so on and so forth. Doesn't mean sometimes they don't reach out for help, but same as me, right? They don't need me. They don't give me that vibe of like, if I'm not there, everything's gonna crumble. No, they've got this, right? They've got this, and I'm not their only friend either. Um, so that changed. And I think that changed in a few different realizations about life, about people, about myself. So first I learned about this whole that was years and years ago. One of my friends who was a doctor, she's still a doctor, we're just not close anymore. She had mentioned this, I can't remember the name of this, the triangle, no, of like the victim, the savior, and the what was the last one? I can't, the oppressor, something like that. There's someone who's like the aggressor. Can't remember the proper name in English or in French for that matter. But it's a triangle. You'll see what I mean. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And I saw how much I was resisting it. I hated hearing that because I was like, oh, like I tend to be a victim in those areas. I tend to be, sometimes I can also be the oppressor, but my favorite stage is being the savior, right? And so I started understanding that, oh, okay, so I do this all the time, right? So that was one of my realizations and in understanding, oh, so I'm playing a role and I'm very comfortable with specific roles, right? And so also I could see this is the lens through which I see life, meaning also that I was seeing some people as oppressors. So I wasn't giving some people, I was not giving them a chance. Like I was very, very happy to cast some people as evil and to step in, like, the hero that I was. And so a lot of times I was misinterpreting situations and I was behaving in ways that I thought were good in the moment, but actually they were not for the highest good of everyone. They were good for my own ego, you know? They were good for my own ego to feel special and to feel like I was the one who had the solution. Um, and so not so selfless after all, right? It felt selfless when I was doing it. I thought that's what I was doing, and then when I realized that I wasn't, I had a big, big crisis inside myself of like, oh, there's a lot of ego in this person pointing at me, right? There's a lot of ego inside of me. Like I always want to be the special one. I want to always want to be, the one who steps up. And at the same time, because of some of the trauma that I had lived through, I knew that in some aspects of my life, some areas of my life, I was being a victim. And I was learning how not to be a victim, like how one puts themselves in that, where it comes from. I did a lot of therapy. So I would say that type of work is usually linked to therapy, right? So psychology, not so much in coaching. But still, like this work has impacted me in many, many, many different ways, personally, but also professionally. Um, and yeah, I realized that I was a victim in many ways, and I realized that me being a savior in many occurrences, I was keeping people in their victim state. And so as I was empowering myself when I was being a victim, I was empowering myself to not be a victim and to find my agency and to empower myself to make decisions, to think differently, to like understand what was really going on with my emotions and own that, right? Then I didn't want to. I realized that I was becoming sometimes the obstacle to other people being able to also empower themselves, right? And so that started becoming important to me. And so I started changing my relationships with people by not saving them and saying, like now everything inside of me, I didn't have the good girl syndrome idea by then, back then, but like nowadays I would have said that in every fiber of my good girl, identity here wants to step in and help you, but if I do, it's gonna prejudice you, right? So you've got this. Like, what if you knew the solution, right? And so at the same time, I was learning things about coaching. I was learning all these different things where, as a coach, you don't give people solutions, right? That is more if you're mentoring, then there's some advice that you could give, right? But in coaching, the idea is not to be giving advice to people. It's always reflecting back what the person is showing you, and it's asking empowering questions so that you would, after a session with me, not know what I think about the situation, right? But you would know what you think about the situation when I remind you of your own agency and how capable you are and all of those things, right? And so it's like going back to you and how much power you have, how much agency you have inside of you. And so that shifted things as well in my behavior with people, meaning that I started elevating the people who were negative in my life. And I also then had less and less desire for people, not desire is not the right term because it's not a sensual thing. I mean that I was less and less attracted to people who wanted to stay in a victim state. So there, like some people naturally left my life because I could see that they were not willing to step out of that. Like when I was stopping being the savior, like they didn't want to change either. So that removed a section of people, right? So I had people who were more empowered and who like the relationship was more of an equal type of thing, right? Where we could step in and out of roles and we could all be quite self-aware. However, I still realized that some of the people who were in my life at that stage, right, were still people that like if I had a choice now, I would not have chosen them, right? And that was, I'm saying this like that because to me, that was a very distressing thought. Because one of my values is to be loyal. Um, Used to be much more important back then than it is now. It still is, but for very, very few people. And in not in every circumstance in every way, right? My first loyalty is to me nowadays. It wasn't before. And so I had a big, big conflict. It took me many years to be okay with that. Is I had a whole phase where I was like, how can I be loyal to people? And I really don't actually really like those people anymore because, you know, they think like that. They like, we're not aligned anymore. And or I felt like I was growing very fast and growing out of a way of being, and other people weren't. However, equal, it felt like we were in a conversation that I felt like I could not relate to people anymore and like they were still bringing me down. Not because there was, you know, we were still in those roles that I was talking about before, but just because I changed. I changed, right? I changed and I evolved in a specific way, and they had either evolved in a different way or they had not evolved, which is what had tended to happen most in my life. That I tend to evolve very fast into different things. Doesn't mean that other people should do the same, right? But I realize that one of the things that I love, except for someone who has a bias towards some sort of positivity or agency at least, both, I would say, both agency and positivity, because someone who's positive but does nothing is not attractive to me. And so, like, who's just dreaming and never doing anything, it's not very attractive to me. But also someone who's always, you know, taking action and action and action, but they're negative and they're always fighting the world is not very attractive to me either. I realized that I really wanted someone also. So you see the two criteria that I started having. I also wanted someone who was constantly evolving and evolving fast because that's how I behave, and how I tend to be. And one of the ways that I was keeping myself small was by having people who were negative towards me, sometimes jealous of me, sometimes just they could not understand why I was doing as many things or why I was so ambitious or why I wanted to do so many growth things. And so they would be giving me feedback supposed to protect me and to help me with regards to like, are you going to stop doing this? Like, are you going to stop working so hard? Like, why are you doing, you know, why are you learning five languages? So, you know, can't you just do one like everyone? Like these little comments that were either like jokes or, you know, just said in passing, right? Supposedly for my own good. But afterwards, I could realize that what was the intention behind it? Like, even if it's protection, it's out of fear for me. Like, that's not how I want to live my life. And this is not inspiring me. If anything, it's creating problems in my life. And so I would say that that was the last layer of people that I removed. Was it's not that there was anything wrong with those people, and it's not that like they were not positive or they didn't have agency. It's just I realized I have a different pace, right? And I have a different vision for what inspires me, right? And I gave myself permission because it really was a permission to say, you know what? If I see these, like I really love these people, I always will, right? Um, in my heart, they're friends, but I think it's time for me to let them go in some way, you know, to just like accept the reality that is going on inside of me, which is for my closest people. I want them to be super fast growth type of people who are positive and have agency, you know, like both, all three of those. And so giving myself permission for these criteria has changed everything, right? Because I released a lot of people actually, which made me very sad in the moment, but also gave me a lot of relief, which I think is one of the indicators, you know, when you're wondering which path to go towards. It's not that there will be no pain, right? There was nothing pleasurable for me to let go of people that I loved. I felt very guilty right? I felt ashamed. I felt all sorts of things, right? But I also felt so much relief. Like I was happy for that. I was both sad, but also very, very happy that like that was over and I didn't have to have that weight. Like these people in my life were giving me a sensation of weight, you know? And so, yeah, once I started with one person, it became easier to recognize for other people. It's like a snowball effect, right? And that's really how I changed things for myself. And find as a conclusion, I would say how I'm living my life now is I don't feel like I owe my friendship or my time to anyone, which does not mean that I'm not kind, which does not mean that I'm not generous with my time, which does, right? But I'm the one who chooses. Like, no one can guilt me at this stage into doing something that I don't want to do, right? And if I see this behavior in someone, I'll either say it out loud. So, like, right now, where you're pushing me, like I said no, and you're pushing me. And there's a little bit of like anger inside of me to say, you're crossing my boundaries now, like, stop it, right? Or it's an indicator if they do it over and over and over again. I'm like, this is not my person. Like, this is not someone for me. Like, I love them. It doesn't change how much I love them. I wish them all the best. They're a fantastic person, but this is not someone that I want to have in my surroundings because there's really a conflict inside of me and it's self-doubt producing, right? And they're like pushing me to their advantage, which is not what I want to have around me. Um, so yeah, that's where I am in my life right now. I only have a few very close people. I have basically three friends that are the closest to me, that I absolutely adore, right? And I still talk to them like once every month or once every 2 months, right? But when I see them, I can spend a whole day with them or 3 days with them, and I absolutely adore them, right? And then I have my fiance as well, right? And that's it. Everyone else, they're friends, but they're friends, I don't need to see them all the time, right? Where if I travel, which I do quite a bit right now, I don't feel like I have any obligation to see anyone else. I just want to see those three people, right? And then, of course, my fiance that I talk to every single day, but that's it. That's the extent of it. And then there's my family, right? Um, and that's it. And I'm very, very happy, in this configuration of my life. Perhaps it will change, right? But I think that right now, this is my sweet spot and it makes me very, very happy. And it was not easy and it was painful and it was learned through many, many lessons and self-awareness, seeing where I was part of the problem or part of the problem, and choosing to do things differently and then really understanding what were my rules for the people that I wanted to have in my life and who I wanted to be as well, right? So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that if you have a similar type of situation in your life where you're working through, right? You've been working through all of that for a while, that this gives you a few, a different perspective on how you could do things or like how someone else, so AKA me, how someone else has done it or is doing it, right? Um, if you enjoyed this episode, please put a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comments, anything, if it was useful, put it in the comments. I'll be sure to respond. And I think that's it, my friend. I will see you next week for episode number, what would that be? Episode number 19 soon. Oh my God, next week, that means we will be at episode 20. I should make a post about that. It's pretty exciting. I wish you all the best for today and for the coming week. And I'm sending you all my love, all my good vibes, all my everything that's beautiful towards you. See you, my friend. Talk to you soon.